Hi there, Ken Bader here, founder of Bader Training and Consulting and author of the latest book, The Formula for Business Success equals B plus C plus S, a discussion on brand, culture, and strategy alignment. Recently, I had the distinct pleasure of doing a webinar for the National Credit Union Administration on social media and marketing. And it was so much fun. I had a great time with Kenzie Snowden and Jeff Snyder and Lauren Bethea and putting that thing on. It was really a lot of fun before and during, and wanted to have a little bit of fun after because there were a number of questions that the folks at the NCUA sent to me that you had sent in, you the attendees of the particular webinar. And I thought it would be interesting not only to answer them via writing, which they asked me to do and have certainly done, but also to come to you through video. I mean, webinars are great, don't get me wrong, but it's always great to see people's facial expressions and some of my jokes and tongue-in-cheek nature come across a little bit better via video. So I thought that this would be a fun addition to talk about some of the questions and some of the answers that I gave. So to start off, one of the questions was, what's more valuable, a like or a share? Well, they're both valuable, but in my opinion, a share is more valuable because it shows a deeper level of engagement. If you just like it, well, that's great, and then you kind of move along. But if you share it, that means not only do you like it, but you think so much about that post that you're willing to share it with everybody that's on your social media page, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, whatever that may be. Are you allowed to promote personal product your credit union offers, such as loan promotions? This individual mentioned that there was a compliance issue. Yes, you certainly can. I've seen credit unions do it. I think when you're promoting product, you do have to be a little bit careful because much like any type of marketing, there are certain things that you could say, there's certain things that you can't say, and there's certain ways that you have to say it. But when it comes to social media, it's not a platform that's meant for selling. Yeah, can you sell? Yes, you certainly can. And if you put out a lot of good educational and fun content that's engaging, your audience will give you a little leeway in selling to them a little bit. But I know credit unions like UME Federal Credit Union, which is one I mentioned in the webinar, that uses social media extensively and never, ever sells a product. They use it for brand enhancement, brand awareness, and for better engagement for their members and prospective members. So the point that I made in my answer here is that compliance has never been a problem with posting something that you did for a local charity or pictures that you may have shown of your staff helping out in the community with a particular event. Those are things that lend themselves extremely well to social media and something that you'll very rarely, if ever, get in trouble for. If your credit union does something for the community or local charity, is it okay to share that on Facebook? Absolutely. In fact, I joked during the webinar, if you don't do that, or if you ask me if you should do that and you're one of my clients, I would probably mildly verbally abuse you. Obviously that's a little tongue-in-cheek, but with some of my clients that know me very well, I could push that envelope just a little bit. But absolutely, I once worked with a credit union years and years ago, and they did so many great charitable donations and things for people that you wouldn't believe. Awesome stuff. And the CEO refused to put out even any press releases on it. And then a couple months later, the CEO said, well, how come nobody knows about all of the things we do for charity, the things that we do in the community? Well, you need to tell people that stuff, and social media is a great avenue with which to do that, coupled with the fact, to go a little bit farther from a marketing and branding standpoint, you're a credit union. It's your members' money. They own you. They deserve to know what you're doing with that money. And if you're doing things in the community, you're doing charitable events, that's something that they want to know about and will be happy to know about because they know that their money is being spent in a positive way. Let's see. When posting an article from an external website, are there any credentials you need to follow when posting to Facebook? Not that I'm aware of. It's possible there may be something I'm missing, but if you're posting the URL of an article on Facebook, for instance, that seems to be the most popular social media platform, and rightfully so, for credit unions marketing to members, to natural persons, excuse me. If you're just simply cutting and pasting the URL of a particular article, it's going to take people to that article, and people are going to see the credentials. They're going to see the author. They're going to see where it was posted, so you're fine there. If you're just going to quote somebody from an article, then I would give credit where credit is due. Say Danny Lipschitz says that you shouldn't pay over 5% on credit card interest, and you like that. Well, let's make sure that we give Danny Lipschitz the credit for that particular quote. All right, next question was, any recommendation, what social media do financial customers use most? Facebook is still the king. It's the number one popular social media platform overall. It's the number one business-to-consumer site. LinkedIn and Twitter are close seconds to that. LinkedIn, however, is more of a business-to-business. And Twitter, it seems like they're losing a little bit of traction, although they're clearly, from a business-to-consumer standpoint, a clear number two. If you're only going to use one platform, I would say use Facebook. It's still the king out there. Would it be possible to get a sample social media plan? Yes and no. The straight answer is yes. I certainly can provide that for you. I do have some relationships with my clients that allow me to share some of their information rather than just post it on the particular reply here. I would rather, if you really want that, then just simply contact me. Here is my contact information right here. LinkedIn, being a business-to-business company, Bader Training and Consulting is my favorite social media, but you can obviously always email me as well at kbader@btcinc.net or .org. Either will work. But while I certainly can give you an example of an actual social media plan, as I mentioned in the webinar, the social media plan doesn't have to be a standalone plan. We already have a strategic plan and a marketing plan and a social media plan, an operations plan. The fact is, the global number one plan that contains all of those things is the strategic plan. And the marketing plan should be a part of the strategic plan, and the social media plan should be one of the tactics and pieces in that overall marketing plan, because, again, we want social media to be a tactic in our overall marketing strategy, not the tactic. And so the other point that I make in the answer here that I've written is that one of the most important pieces of the marketing plan is the marketing calendar. And that's also an important piece for the social media plan or portion of that marketing strategy, because you would want to put in that calendar specific posts and timing of posts in that particular spot, because it'll help you stay on track, and it'll help you to plan your next week, your next month, and so forth. Where in what section of your marketing plan do you insert your story? Or is it throughout? Well, in some instances it is throughout, but I talked about telling your unique story in the webinar, and that's akin to the company history, which is one of the organization drivers that I always suggest that we lead off with in the strategic plan. Usually the first portion, which is a short portion, is an executive summary, and then the very next section that I often recommend is organization drivers. There are 5 of them. mission, vision, values, service standards, but that first one is company history, which talks about our unique story. So I would lead off with that unique story. What would be a suggestion on how to obtain more reviews on your page? Well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I suggest asking. And we don't have to be pushy about it, but a few things that we can do is if we get a positive comment within the branch or on the phone with a member, say thank you. I really appreciate that you enjoyed our service today. Would you mind reviewing us on Facebook or Yelp and writing a sentence or two about your experience since you are so happy? Most people will be happy to do it. Another thing you might want to do is just very simply, maybe on some 8.5 by 11 sheets and some acrylic at the teller lines or at the member service rep desks, wherever you have the most member contact. Say, we're on Facebook. Come and like us. Tell us how we're doing on Facebook. Please, we welcome your feedback and we welcome your reviews. Just reminding them that you want those reviews, even those negative reviews. It's unfortunate if they come on Facebook or Yelp, but that's still better than not knowing about them. So encourage your members to do reviews. You could also do a contest, but let me come back to that. Let's see. Here we go. How would you recommend helping with reviews? Again, we talked about that. They don't want to be pushy. Well, certainly, as I mentioned, if you don't want to be pushy, you can do those 8.5 by 11 acrylic signs, encouraging people to do a review. You could also do a contest. Not what I would necessarily suggest for reviews, but you could do a Facebook contest, give away something that's rather small. And encourage people to go to your Facebook site. In fact, this is one of the articles, This is one of the articles that I recommend in answering my questions. It's from E3 Image Group, and it's on expanding your reach online. Go to the answers when they share it with the NCUA, and you'll get the direct URL here. It talks about doing contests on social media and gives 5 other tips to expand your reach on social media. So I highly recommend you reading that article. All right, video. There's a question on videos. Obviously, I'm doing one right now. I love videos. It creates a different level of engagement, and they don't even need to be professional. This isn't professional. I'm on a tablet in a hotel room in St. Louis in between meetings, and I'm doing a video on the NCUA webinar and the questions here. So it doesn't necessarily need to be professional, but it does need to be sincere. I hope that I'm coming across as being sincere and wanting to help you with your marketing and social media. So if this is working for you, then you know that you could do this pretty easily at your credit union. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Is there a way to make the 5-star reviews appear first in the star rating on our Facebook page? Not that I'm aware of, but frankly, what people look at more is the overall average rating on the top. So if your rating is at least 4 out of 5 stars, even better yet, 4.5 out of 5 stars, then I wouldn't worry about a negative review being on the top because people will look at that average first. All right, we talked about reviews already. We have posted some pictures of employees at events or receiving community awards, but not every day around the credit union. Should we start that? Well, I think that you should post pictures whenever it's relevant. If we have something relevant every day, then go ahead and post every day. But as I mentioned here, if we're just posting Tammy eating her morning bagel Monday through Friday while drinking her coffee, that gets a little monotonous and a little boring. So I think that the rule of thumb is post when it's relevant. And relevant on one end may be educational. The other relevance may just be fun. I mentioned Desert Valley's Federal Credit Union in the webinar. They just have fun with some of their pictures, especially around Christmas time. They're wearing Christmas hats. They're doing a lot of fun stuff. It's close to September now. They're doing some NFL football frenzy things, and it's just fun. So if it's relevant, then go ahead and post it. But don't just post for the sake of posting, even if they're pictures. All right, let's see. What are some of the best practices to increase credit union likes and followers? We talked about that. Let's see. We don't currently utilize social media or have a website. So this may be something that would be answered if we did, but how do we combat members trying to get balances or other information from social media? Well, number one, you don't let them do it. If somebody does post that, simply reiterate what should be on your website if you had it, which is don't share any personal information. If you have a business to conduct, either call or go into the branch. But the other thing that I mentioned, if you don't have a website, then you probably shouldn't be on social media. It's a cart before the horse type of thing. You need to have a website, especially because in digital marketing, that website is your marketing hub. You're using social media and email marketing and possibly some other tactics to drive traffic to that website, sometimes even to a specific landing page. So if you don't have a website, you probably shouldn't be on social media anyway. Okay, what do you think about sharing others' posts on Facebook? Well, it all depends on if it's relevant. If it's a feel-good story from the credit union league or a charity that you work with, then yeah, absolutely share it. If it's something educational, possibly on saving money, then and it's not from another financial institution, then yeah, go ahead. But if it's on saving money on credit cards and there's a blatant advertisement for Capital One, I got nothing against Capital One, but I don't want credit unions promoting Capital One. If there's a blatant advertisement for Capital One or Wells Fargo or something, then no, you probably shouldn't post that because it's as if you're advertising for another financial institution. Let's see. Legal issues about posting pictures of members and employees. Can you get away without a release? Yeah, you probably can, but I would suggest getting a release. If somebody doesn't want their picture posted on social media, whether it's an employee or a member, then why do it? Especially if it's an employee, it's easy. You can ask them to sign a release. Frankly, at the hiring process, you can even include that release in the documents that we force employees to sign. And if it's a member, at the very least, simply ask. It's just polite, say, after you take the picture, would you mind if we shared this on social media? And if they say no, then just delete it because you can't really use it anyway. Why would you even want to post a picture of somebody that doesn't want their picture posted? So get a release, or at the very least, ask. Let's see. What are some ways to engage your employees for social media initiatives? Yeah, again, if you don't ask, you don't get. My best suggestion, and there's a few of them, is to go if you have staff meetings, is explain what you're trying to do overall with your brand and your marketing efforts, and then mention social media and ask for feedback. What do you think we should do? Well, any ideas that you have? Again, as I mentioned in the webinar, one of my clients that I'm really, really proud of, Cincinnati, Ohio Police Federal Credit Union, went to their employees and asked them for some ideas. And they came up with this really fun gnome idea that they could do on their website and their social media, and they're starting to have a little bit of fun with it. And I think that's terrific because we got to have some fun, man. Running a credit union some days can be hard, so let's find some ways that we could have some enjoyment and not make social media, just one more thing we got to do. All right, let's see if there is anything else. Oh, there was a question on boosting posts and on Facebook and the difference between ads and posts. Yes, there is a difference. I do have the URLs in the answers that you'll find, but Facebook itself has a lot of good information. Hopefully you can see that URL there, but talks about boosting posts and how to do it. It also talks about ads in their Facebook business page. And I saw a really good article on Social Media Examiner. I just felt it would be a little bit easier rather than to go into great detail on boosts and ads to reference some other ideas, or reference some other resources. And Social Media Examiner has a really nice article here on boost posts or promoting posts, telling you the difference and when you may be able to do what. And also the last one on from John Loomer. He's got an article on Facebook promoted posts, a proven strategy to target fans and non-fans. Another good article and a good resource for some information. So not that I don't want to answer that, but it's rather involved, and simply wanted to also give you some more resources and give you another perspective. Let's see. Let's see. And on that, somebody asked here about boosting posts and how that increases your organic posts. That does do that. I don't have any studies per se, but that John Loomer article does talk about that a little bit. Let's see. How does a credit union measure what is successful and what's not successful for a social media plan? I got a couple questions like this, and then I got the ubiquitous, what's the ROI? What's the profitability? Well, yeah, it's interesting because a few years ago I went to a seminar on social media, and one of the very first things the presenter said is that the ROI of being and using social media for a business is that in 5 years you'll still be in business. Rather harsh. But the fact is social media has become a lot like websites were about 10 years ago and are definitely today. If you don't have a website today, you're pretty much considered irrelevant, especially if you're a big financial institution. It shocks me today that any credit union wouldn't have a website. And social media is becoming that way, at least for, Facebook, maybe Twitter and a couple others, but Facebook and Twitter are kind of the minimum. So from that standpoint, if you're not on social media, it's almost like becoming like not having a website. So it's not about just the ROI, it's about staying relevant in the marketplace. In terms of measuring success, it depends on what your goals are. I had a question on brand awareness here, and certainly if you're increasing and continually increasing likes, shares, comments, other engagement, things of that nature, views if you have videos, that's showing that you do have more brand awareness and that you are increasing the engagement with your members, which is what you want. If the goal and success is to measure ROI or to measure new loans or things like that, can that be done? Yes. I've seen it done. You can go through a progression of likes, shares, comments, leads, closing of an actual sale. I've seen a business do that before, but this is a big business making $10 million a year. It's rather involved. So can you do it? Can you bring in the correlation? Absolutely you can. But if you're a $100 million credit union, even a $1 million credit union in assets for that matter, do you really want to put forth those resources to see how much that social media is moving the needle? I would actually look to see the success overall of the marketing strategy, including social media, because that correlates to more loans, more members, more non-interest income. Let's see. What is your philosophy? Here we go. What is your philosophy on allowing social media interaction during work hours for employees? The reason I ask is that we're struggling to have our employees engage with social media pages. There was also another one on how do we get our employees to engage in our social media page when they're not allowed to have their cell phones during work and they're not allowed to have any social media access in the workplace. Well, and I talked a little bit about this during the webinar when we asked that question, and it's one of those deals where it becomes a culture question, not just a marketing or social media question. If you're struggling to get employees to engage on your social media page, I would ask you, what's the culture like? Because if they do have access to social media, and they don't want to engage in talking positively about the credit union, even though you've asked, I would wonder, well, what's our culture like? Because people that are really happy about the place that they work, and really passionate about it, don't have trouble telling other people where they work and why they're proud about working there and that they have great products and services and so forth. So if you're struggling to get your employees to do something which should be relatively easy, especially if you have passion for the place, you really need to ask some serious questions. Like I always say, my tagline, we're creating businesses or environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers, members, or clients want to keep coming back. So if that's not the case at your credit union, then we really need to look at that culture. In terms of the employees not having access to social media or even their cell phones during work, that's one of two things. Now, if the credit union building or the credit union office is in the building of a sponsor that happens to be a secure location where the sponsor won't allow that for certain reasons that are valid, that's one thing. But if it's because we have some kind of an archaic management structure that just doesn't allow a human being to have their cell phone, trust that they'll actually do their job and not be on their cell phone, and trust that they'll do the right thing on social media, and then we really need to talk about trust and the culture that we have at the credit union, because that's a much, much bigger issue than getting likes on social media, frankly. But I do suggest, if you do have the right culture and people do actually have access to social media, is to pick a few people you trust. Obviously, people in the marketing department, if you're that large. If you're a smaller credit union, maybe 2 or 3 people that have earned the trust as an employee and have designated times during the week where they can work on the credit union social media and engage with members. That's how I would work it there. Let's see if there's anything that we missed. Nope, I don't believe so. Thank you again for submitting these questions. Thank you again for your attendance at the webinar. I had a blast, both before, I had a blast during, and I had a blast answering these questions and doing this video, so I hope that you got a lot out of it. So again, I'm Ken Bader, founder of Bader Training and Consulting. There's my contact info. If there's anything else I could do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. The email is kbader@btcinc.net or .org. You certainly can get me either way. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. Hopefully all your questions got answered, and I hope that you're having a great day and a powerful marketing day. Take care.